Very well.
Good. Very
Good.
good.
Welcome, hustlers.
Woo!
Welcome, Colin. Welcome, Kelly.
I guess that's what we'll call you. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to episode 6 of the
Episode
Authentic Hustle.
6. Yes.
We're here.
We're here.
6 weeks in. It's been going well. I hope everybody out there in listener land is enjoying it as much as we are. We do anticipate Brian to perhaps join us.
Perhaps.
Sure.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't, he doesn't. That's okay. Well,
he lives in his own. He lives in his own time zone.
Yeah, we'll have a shorter show today than usual, but we do have VJ on here who's been known to have a couple hour show. So maybe it, VJ Rogan, as we call him. Anyway, but we'd like to thank everybody for joining us again today. The Authentic Hustle, where our show is all about everything authentic. Every day in our hustle and bustle as we go about our business and do what we do, we believe in authenticity, right? But I was talking to Kelly a little bit earlier, and maybe we don't.
Well, we have to question everything, right? We have to question it.
Yeah, the world we live in today, for sure, we have to question everything. Maybe hour by hour, minute by minute. But I guess as I opened, I might as well start.
Absolutely.
So I was thinking about a few things, and I think a lot of times in my life, maybe I look at the big picture, and maybe I look at it too much. And I remember years ago, probably 15 years ago, there was a book that came out, and it was called "Don't Sweat the Small Stuff." And you know what? I think I probably use that phrase a lot. Like I would tell my kids, don't sweat the small stuff. I would tell people in business or people that maybe I worked for or worked for me, you know what? Hey, don't sweat that small stuff. And you know what? I think maybe the more experience I get, I don't want to say the smarter I get, but the smarter I get, the more experience I get, the more I realize I think I do need to sweat some of the small stuff.
Yeah.
So some of those things are very, very, very important. And one of them being attention to detail, right? That is the small stuff. And Kelly we had a call planned, just a separate call that we have every Wednesday for earlier. And he was having some issues with some of the technology. And to me, he said, it's important he gets that done. Is that okay if we have our call later? I said, absolutely. But, years ago, I would have said, don't sweat the small stuff, right? Not a big deal. It is a big deal. Quality is a big deal.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm starting to sweat the attention to detail, right? It comes back to we get one chance to make a first impression.
Yeah.
So if we let the small stuff go to the side, what do you guys think of that? Like, have you thought about it, or building small habits like the 1% rule, right? Or turning the dial, right? That is small stuff that we deal with every single day. And if we don't sweat it, who does? Does it just do we let it build up, and then we have this pile of steamy whatever cooking on the side that isn't going to give us good results? Kelly, what do you think?
The question that comes to my mind is, what was the purpose of that saying, right? Was that supposed to be for business people or for entrepreneurs or for people that have, high attention to detail? Or was that for a young kid who maybe is dealing with something and making a big deal out of something that they can't see isn't? I think there are situations where don't sweat the small stuff makes a lot of sense, right? Like if you're just having a bit of a tough day or things aren't going exactly how you plan, you could get really, really deep on that, or you could just move on to the next thing, which is beneficial in a lot of cases, right? But like you talked about earlier, for me, having the best quality audio for my show is something that's really, really important to me. And I think a show, for instance, if you don't have good audio quality, it doesn't matter how great your message is if nobody will listen. It's just like making a great brochure, right? I give advice on brochures all the time. And my number one piece of advice is remember who you're marketing to. Millennials, we have like an 11-second attention span, right? You got to be on point. You got to create something that people are going to want to hold on to, look at, and open, because it doesn't matter how good the message is if nobody will listen or read it. And so in that case, attention to detail, sweating the small stuff, really important.
Rogan, what do you think?
No, don't sweat the small stuff. I mean, from the saying, I think what they're trying to tell from the saying or the quote is that don't get carried away because of that. I mean, don't be bogged down by the small stuff. But at the same time, when you're interacting with people, I mean, that is true. I mean, shouldn't get carried away with the small stuff. But at the same time, some of the small stuff also matters. Like, for example, like smiling, for example, like pleasantries. Hey, how are you doing? Like just asking basic questions, and like probably like having the door for someone if someone is walking. I mean, not like, right, very small things like that.
Yeah.
And I think that goes a long way without saying the kindness and a lot of these small things, because like, a small buildup of those things. Oh, he didn't even like say hi to me when I saw him. Oh, he ignored me totally, because those kind of things builds up over time. And after 6 months or so, you never know where it ends up. So, but you know what I try and admit, Colin, sometimes these days, like the older I'm growing, is that I'm not perfect, because I've found a way to acknowledge that I'm not perfect, because I found it myself. So once I acknowledge that I'm not perfect, I'm also allowing that, oh, that could be room for error. I could not be perfect all the time, because that is a pressure on me and for everyone else. I'm also acknowledging that this is what I am. If I'm not like perfect, I'm sorry about that also. So that's how I look at it. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Vijay. The whole time you said that, I'm thinking about going to a lunch, not smiling, not shaking the guy's hand, just sitting down at the table and staring at him. Can you imagine?
Yeah. No smiles. Hi.
Oh, goodness. I love that. No, it's funny because I think about it, Colin, and it's funny because we think about it from the standpoint of like, don't sweat the small stuff, right? But if we look at daily routines, right? It's the small daily routines that have a massive impact on your long-term success. It's what are the little things you do every day consistently? Because even the little things you do every day consistently move a mountain over a year, right? It's not the one grand gesture thing you do that makes the difference. True. It's the little tiny things that, maybe it's doing your LinkedIn in the morning. Maybe it's making sure that you make your calls first thing in the morning instead of putting them off. It's all like, it doesn't even have to be a lot. It just has to be a handful of them. But if you do them every single day, it's a mountain of work. It's a lot of momentum over the course of a year. So I don't know. It's a tough call, because on the other hand, it is those small things we do every day that make the biggest impact in our lives, for good or for worse.
Well, do you think, so to use a sports analogy, say you're playing for the Stanley Cup, that rare chance you may have, right? Or MLB or whatever it may be, that you're in that final game. Is that the most important thing? Is that the sense of accomplishment, or is it the tiny things in your career that got you to that point?
Well, it's every practice and every game they played made them that much better to get them to the Stanley Cup. Like, I don't think you could have the Stanley Cup without the small stuff that got them there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And those are the small things we do every day. And I think about a little bit on stress management, right? It's the tiny little tidbits. I heard a guy, or I read it actually. No, it was a short on a video, and he said, if I don't agree with it, but he said, if you're making at least $100,000 a year, and you're not shooing all this stuff off to the side, right? Like delegating absolutely every small task, you're doing yourself a disservice. I don't agree with that, right? Like all of a sudden you're putting a monetary amount, affixing it to it based on, what are you saying? You would double that income? You would triple that income if you didn't have to deal with some of the small things? Some of the small things can get out of whack, or come unwound very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And that'll retract you from actually, moving ahead.
Oh yeah. So, right? I forget who I was talking to. Literally like 3 days ago, I was talking to a guy about a company that went really south. And they went south when they stopped caring about the little things, when they stopped insourcing some of these really critical tasks. And it sounded like, oh, well, that should have went fine. But there is something to be said about the quality level that you hold yourself to and that you complete tasks to. I think, especially as business owners, we do it better than everyone else because we have more vested interest in our own long-term success.
Yeah, for sure. So that's what's been on my mind, and just something I've kind of been stewing on and looking at, and because I think I'm very good at delegating, but am I delegating just to delegate? Or is it something that, like, if I'm really good at something, I don't think I should just pass it off just because what's it gonna free my time up to do, unless I'm taking on a larger task that somebody else can't do and maybe I can do, or I'm learning something new. So that's kind of all I really had on that today, but that's what's brewing in my mind.
So what do you think, right? Do you sweat the small stuff?
Yeah, I think I do. Right. And I think I should.
Yeah.
Right. It's just, and maybe small is a weird word, right? It's probably because I've got over the rise and grind, 10x, this 20x, and just got down to real business and looked at, there is some businesses that can do that. There's other ones that maybe retract, right? Or maybe you learn to operate more lean.
Yeah.
Right. Like lean, I'm in manufacturing, so lean manufacturing is a big thing.
Yeah.
That's the opposite of a 10x growth model. It's just a totally different growth model. It may get you there. So yeah, I think the small things do matter. And I'm, 6 months from now, I might evolve or grow from that.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for me to dive into that a little bit more and make sure I'm taking care of them. Right.
Yeah.
And I'll use different things, just a personal thing. I go to the gym 5 times a week, and if I don't, like, let's say I shave that back to 3 times, my small habits in between could change and just totally reverse why I'm actually doing what I'm doing. Right. It's just that incremental change, time over time over time. It's that's not sweating the small stuff, but it is a small item, right? And maybe sweating is just a weird word, right? It could be honing in on the small stuff or concentrating on it, like perfecting the small stuff, whatever it may be, right? And I think that's what VJ kind of alluded to in the beginning, right? Is that's kind of the thing, is these are my small things I'm going to deal with. And what you said, Kelly, I like too, is whether it's in business development, and these are the calls you have to make, right? It's like boom, 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 whacking them off your list real quick is easier than waiting till the end of the day. So really you are sweating the small stuff, right? Or calling a customer back, it's not going to be a fun conversation, but I can tell you what, the sense of accomplishment after that call, right? That's like what happened in politics. I told Kelly I'm not talking about it, but what happened in politics yesterday, a decision had to be made. There's going to be some uncomfortable situations after that, and then maybe a good outcome in the end, right? So I'll leave it at that, or I'm going to start sweating a bunch of small stuff. I want to stay happy today.
VJ, what you got?
No, I was just thinking of a small example, actually, in terms of sweating the small stuff, because I have friends, relatives, like some are in Canada, some are in other countries. They call me on WhatsApp. Otherwise, I miss the call. My phone has been on silent mode for the last 10 or 12 or 15 years. It's been on silent mode always. But sometimes you're in a call like this or on a show like this, you may not be able to pick the call all the time. But it was you missed the call. And I've seen, like, the simplest thing I try and do is, like, I go and acknowledge that first I missed the call. Yeah. Hey, I missed your call. Sorry, I couldn't pick it up. I'll call you right back. Like, whenever I see it, whether I see it like 2 hours late or 5 hours late, whenever I see it, I acknowledge that, so that the person who called is at peace, first of all. I think that is a little small stuff I sweat about, but I'm happy to sweat about it. Actually. Yeah. Today,
workout.
Yeah, I'm working on it. So today I wanted to bring a topic that affects everyone in terms of, like, time. So time is something each of us care about. And I want to talk about how that time is being robbed from every one of us. This affects people in Canada, in global. It's a global topic. I mean, it's like in every country pretty much. So I just wanted to give like an example. For example, we in a marketplace. Let's say we had 10 apples in a marketplace, and we had $10, right? And the worth of each apple would be $1. Right. So whereas like if the same 10 apples existed, that doesn't change. And if the market has, let's say, $40, the price of each apple would now be suddenly $4. Right. And imagine now the market has like $40 to $400 to 4,000 to 4 million. Right. So it keeps growing. So that's inflation. And I wanted to emphasize on inflation that inflation and fiat currency, because like that is in a way kind of robbing people's time, right? For example, let's say you made $100,000 a year, for instance, and you were living a comfortable life. Now that $100,000 is not enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
So instead of like one person working, two people have to work. Husband and wife have to work, right? And some people have to do like two jobs to make the ends meet, right? So that's like you're robbing time. Yeah. That time could be probably an extra dinner with your family, or playtime with your kids, or you could be doing your fun activities, whatever you wanted to do in that time. So I just wanted to bring it back in terms of like because the whole premise of fiat currency from 1971 onwards, when Richard Nixon, until then it was backed by gold, at least the US dollar. And I think many other countries followed suit. In 1971, Nixon took off the gold standard. He said when he took it off, it was a temporary decision, that it will not be backed by gold. Since then, it never went back. Right? So, and Fort Knox has never been audited until they're going to probably audit it very soon, hopefully. But I'm just saying,
there's nothing there.
There's nothing there. So there is no backing. It's just a paper. It's just based on trust. So what happens over time is there's unchecked power with Federal Reserve and so many other things. There's unlimited amounts of trillions of dollars printed, not only in US, in Canada, and across the globe. So what it actually is doing globally is basically it's robbing people's time. And I think there are people who believe in Bitcoin. There are people who doesn't. But I just want to give a small example with the picture. And by the way, this is not by any means for a disclaimer. I have to say it because it's not a financial advice. Do your own research. Please do that. And if you can listen to Adam's show on mine or Business Development Podcast, that's appreciated. Right. So, yeah. So this is a picture I just wanted to share. If you look at a $20 bill and what it could afford in 1998, it could probably fill your entire card in 98.
Yeah.
Look at what it could do in 05, 2014, 2020. I think you get the message. The same thing with like in 2012 or 2011, someone bought a pizza with 10,000 Bitcoins, right? Just a crazy example.
Yeah.
So look at what the purchasing. So it's completely deflationary, the exact opposite of what fiat is. So is what Bitcoin stands for. So I just want to leave it there and get your thoughts.
I see who you have the president's face there on the.
I couldn't get any other picture. I was searching for it. Like that's the one I got. But the message has nothing to do with Trump. So.
Yeah.
That's the topic. How it is, inflation is basically robbing time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess the question that I've always had regarding inflation is why does it have to? Like, when did we decide that when we inject more money that everything actually has to become more expensive? Who made that decision? Because I feel like, okay, you're absolutely right. But once again, arbitrary, right? It's an arbitrary number that we just decide that now inflation is 8%. Like, on a certain level, and I get it when you have more of something in theory, but our pay isn't changing because they printed more money, VJ, right? Our pay didn't change, just our buying power changed.
Yeah.
Who in the government was like, oh, well, since we printed more money, now everything's going to have to cost 8% more? Because let's get real. That's a decision.
Mm-hmm. Well,
yeah.
Here's the other thing. I look at like with stagflation, inflation, deflation, right? Let's go back 5 years to COVID, and then the vehicle, the chassis shortage, everything else, the chip shortage. The vehicles jumped literally 25%, like that, right? Why haven't they come down? right? So the new set point is here, right? Somebody's making that money, right?
Yeah.
So the new set point is here, and we're going to go from here to here. And then I remember hearing the president of Ford at the time. They interviewed him and they said, well, people aren't going to be able, they're not making more money, like Kelly said, right? They're not earning more money. It's not catching up. And he said, well, it's easy. He said, we'll just offer 10-year amortizations on a vehicle.
Yeah.
Right. So is
Wow.
that is I'll say it this way: is that an answer or is that the answer? That's an answer, right?
Yeah.
There's a big difference, right? So he gives that answer quite very quickly. We accept it, right? And how
Right.
do we accept it? By buying that vehicle. We say, oh, okay. So a Chevy truck is now $100,000,
Yeah.
right? Less than 10 years ago, and this is kind of like the shopping cart analogy, right? It's
Right.
reversing. It is
Right.
a house in America could be bought for $100,000.
Yeah.
It could be, right? Very easily. It doesn't matter where you are, you could buy one.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
For sure. So for the price of 2 trucks, you could have bought a very good family home.
Well, and just to go
Mm.
back on that, when I worked in Dodge in 2008, you could get, not a loaded Ram 1500, but
Yeah.
one with all the bells and whistles you care
Yeah.
about, like power locks, power steering, air conditioning, stereo, 40 grand.
Yeah, I know.
Like, that's
I know.
2008. So
Yeah.
you're that same vehicle today, you're absolutely right. Probably 90 grand.
Right.
So-
So I'll use another example. When 4 years ago, just in our manufacturing process, one portion of it was about $28,000 to $30,000, $74,000 today.
Wow.
Wow.
Has zero to do with us. Zero to do with us. Comes from auto manufacturing. So where does that come from? And it's non-negotiable. There's no incentives. There's no fleet rate.
Right.
There's no nothing. So they threw this number at it. It stuck, and now they're sticking with it. Right.
Yeah. I think when it is when I think there's no, I mean, people always like go, hey, here's the problem, right? People are like good at finger pointing. People often finger point at like printing dollar bills and like, oh, you're printing more money. I don't think that alone is the problem. It's a low hanging fruit. It's an easy thing to pick on. But I don't think that alone is a problem. It's about it's about how much value you're creating. How much are you producing versus consuming, right? I think, are we producing enough? Are we creating value in the society? I think when the value drops and we just keep printing money, the cost of living actually goes up. I think there's not enough value. There's not enough producers in the market, where there's not enough value created in the marketplace. So I think that is one key problem that no one talks about. They always talk about the easiest thing to talk about, blame the government. I mean, yes, there's a bigger problem. Government does it. But if there's not even enough value, I think that's a bigger problem too.
Well, what's scary is I just worked the math on that, Colin. So, 17 years, if to go back to 2008 for a $40,000, semi-loaded vehicle.
Yeah.
If the same thing is, 90,000 today, that's a 44% increase in 17 years, right?
Yeah.
If we have another 44% increase in the next 20 years, I don't think people are going to be able to afford anything. What happens then?
Yeah, you're right. You're right, because housing has become unaffordable in many cities, right? Now in a vehicle, when your mode of transportation becomes unaffordable, right? As of late, air travel, right, is increasingly exponentially where for the, everyday person, which is everybody, right, becomes unaffordable. They've gotten rid of the bus lines, right?
Yeah.
Greyhound, and those are kind of a thing of the past. We're not adding trains, right? What are we doing? It's kind of like a cauldron boiling of a bunch of things that is anything ever going to pop to the top? How are we going to deal with this? I think I don't know. And then you look at the world is changing rapidly by the day, right? We used to be able to get goods from China, we can get them from Vietnam, get them from all over the world, Ukraine.
Yeah.
One thing we noticed in our industry, wiring harnesses for vehicles come from Ukraine.
Wow, I didn't know that.
That's it.
Mm.
Like from Ukraine.
Yeah.
That's where they all come from, right? All, like majority of them for all auto manufacturing. Okay. Why do they only come from there? I'm okay that they come from there, but
Yeah.
I
Yes.
assumed because I didn't know that they would come from China.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's just say the US or Canada decides, hey, we're going to start manufacturing these. Well, that portion of your vehicle is going to be X amount of dollars more. Right now, it's not 90,000; it's 94,000 or whatever it is. Right. I just think we're living in times where nothing is catching up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's
Far-
scary because what that means is that eventually the whole thing has to implode on itself.
Yeah.
And then what does that mean for all of us?
That's right.
Yeah. Now, just want to add to that in terms of like, I mean, like for previously the home prices, like you mentioned, was around 100,000. Now it's not anywhere close to that price. It's probably like 10 times or 7 times the price. $700K, $1 million home prices are like very normal today.
Very normal.
And if a vehicle is 100,000, and if someone goes to a college, that's another 200,000.
Yeah.
So, and you amortize it for 25 years and for 30 years, like then when are you actually living? And
Yes.
right, I mean,
Yes.
you wake up, pay the bill, wake up, pay the bill. That's
You're
right.
a slave till death. You're a slave till death.
Right.
In part of it in housing, right? I heard it years ago, but it was we all become bay watchers. You sit in the bay window and watch out, right?
Mm,
Because that's all you can do. And I don't think an economy of being house poor, vehicle poor, all that type of debt is good for anybody because your mental health rolls into that. Your everyday, like VJ said, we're stealing time for what?
right.
Yeah.
Right. If all we're going to do is wake up to work to pay bills and repeat, that is somewhat industrial age.
Yeah.
Right. That's like punching the drill press all day, every day. Like I thought about it. I'm like, everybody always says, well, I wish I could go back to the 50s.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure about that. What would be different, right? Your minimum wage, your salaries were here. It was very, I don't think there was a big middle class there. It was kind of like what it is now. I think we need to break that stereotype and change it. But
Right.
I don't know what that is. I don't know what that answer is.
Well, the question that I have is this, right? Like, you know, we're somewhat smart. I think the people in this room, we hold our own, but we're not brilliant by any chance, you know, like there's a lot of people much smarter than us. I think everybody knows that the system we're in right now doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But, you know, for instance, we're heading into an election in Canada, right? It hasn't been called yet, but it's coming.
Mhm.
I hear them talking axe the tax. I hear them saying we need more affordable houses, right? But none of this actually solves the problem. And the problem is we are being robbed to death. We're being robbed blind, like Vijay said, by inflation. Well, is there just no solution for it? Is that why nobody comes up and says anything about it? Like, because we're not dumb. We know we're getting screwed. We know we're paying too many taxes. We know inflation's eating our dollars. And they come on and all they do is talk about, oh, well, we're going to axe the carbon tax. It's like, great. Okay, great. But
Then what?
that's
Then
not
what?
our biggest problem, right? Our biggest problem is our, annual loss of about 5% of our buying power.
You know what? I heard a guy. He asked me a question, and he posed it like this. He said, "If we ask ourselves, or if we say so what at the end of a statement or a question or whatever, it really helps us dig into finding the real answers." So just like that, so what? Right. So I actually wrote it and it's stuck on my wall in my office, and I ask myself all the time, like anytime I'm thinking, okay, this is what should be done, or are we going to do this? So what?
Right.
Right. And
Right.
then the second one was, who cares? Right. Because if we can ask the question, like you ask a question and, Kelly asked me a question, right? Any question right now.
Yeah. Okay. Why should we pay the carbon tax?
Who cares? Right. Who cares?
You
Right,
sound
why
like
should
Trudeau
we?
right now.
Well,
You don't need that money.
but at the end of the day, if we can't answer that question, who cares?
Yeah.
Right? Of course we shouldn't pay it, but the underlying fear is if it's been taken. I'll use it this way. Maybe this will work. If we've learned to pay $90,000 for a vehicle,
Yeah.
how the hell are we going to retract it back to 45 or let's say 60?
Oh,
right?
you're right. They don't go back.
And who cares? So
Right.
if you axe the tax, if you do this, where are those funds going to come from to pay for whatever needs to be paid for? Right?
Mhm.
It's no different than Doge. You can wipe out trillions of dollars, right?
Right.
Now you have no employees anywhere. I don't know how that's going to work.
Yeah.
You have nobody to deal with the day to day. There's real functions that are going to be missed that were probably already missed before.
Yeah.
So you've axed all that money. Where are you reallocating that to? Like, I'll just use an example. I haven't seen income tax removed. I haven't seen taxes lowered. I haven't seen prices come down. So at the end of the day, who cares? Right? Tell me what you're going to tell me, or so what?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, it doesn't help us get there, but what are we spending our time doing, or what are we spending our time thinking about? How are we going to get there? Or are we going to 30 years from now just be still burning around, like just running in circles?
Okay. I'm going to say something maybe that's a little bit controversial here,
But
it's specifically about Canadians. I
Yep.
think we're pushovers.
Mhm.
I think we're completely afraid to stand up for anything that could potentially put us out in some really hot water. And I hate that because I am a Canadian and I understand it. And I've been in every room having that conversation where it's like, we're obviously getting screwed. And everyone's like, yeah, we're getting screwed.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
Like,
know
that's it.
what?
Like, that's it, right? There's nothing else. There's like
Okay.
the greatest thing I think we've ever done in the past 25 years is the trucker convoy. I think that's the only time we've ever
know.
stood up for ourselves,
So
which is, it sucks. It
And-
sucks because we're strong people.
and so here's my day yesterday. I wake up and I'm like, oh shit, what is he doing? Rob Ford. I'm like, he's decimating the country. This is it. It's over. I thought maybe there was some hope, and I'll say it this way. I call him the Chris Farley of politics. I'm
Yeah.
like in a van by the river, right? And I'm like, what is going on here? This can't be happening. Like I thought we had somewhat of a truce, like a peaceful half hour going on here. And I'm like, hey, well, I'm going to prepare for my business once again. This is going to be one of those days, right?
Yeah.
Hour and a half later, well, I guess he's on his way down there and they're going to have a talk and they're going to work some things out. He pushed, like you said, we're a pushover, right? He stood his ground, and who knows what tomorrow's going to be, but it's going to be better than it was yesterday, better than it is today. Right?
Maybe.
But no, but here's why it's better.
Yeah.
It showed in order to get to the negotiating table, you can't just say you're sorry.
Mhm.
You can't just say, well, we're going to peacefully just live with this and take what it is because
Yeah.
it's a cycle. I think
There's also bad negotiation too, though, right? And here's the problem. Here's the problem with Canada. So what I'm advocating for is that Canadians need to demand from their politicians what they deserve. I genuinely believe that. I think every politician owes Canadians because Canadians put them there and they are supposed to be there to make life better for us. I think they forget that. And I think if I ever run for politics, I'm never going to forget who put me there. At the end of the day, you're there to make life better for somebody else, for other people, for the people who elected you, right? And for whatever reason, we seem to forget that. So all I'm kind of suggesting here is that Canadians, I'm not suggesting that we're necessarily pushovers in a negotiation with the United States. And I'll get into that why in a second. But I think with regards to holding our politicians accountable for what is best for Canada should just be something that we all just understand. And the moment that they put together policies that negatively hurt Canadians, like the carbon tax, it should just automatically be a no-go. I think any court should have looked at that and said, that's going to get passed down to consumers. Everybody's going to get screwed. This is stupid. Yeah, we care about the environment. Let's do it a different way, right? Like, But nobody did that, and nobody got in the way, and nobody stood up or said anything. And here we are, like, just endlessly getting carbon taxed to death. But sorry, Colin, I just want to get into the next part.
Yeah.
The part with the United States is this. You have to also know how to negotiate with somebody when you're at a massive disadvantage, okay? Here's the thing.
True.
We are at a massive disadvantage in almost every way when it comes down to negotiating with the United States. And sure, he can pull his strong arm tactics. He can cut off the power. But the reality is, any day, United States could do something 10 times that bad to Canada. And I think on a certain level, there's just no acknowledgement of that like we are at a lesser negotiating position. And that on a certain level, we have to be more tactical about what we do. It can't just be like a tariff for tariff, right? Like, okay, sure, stand up for yourself, but that's a stupid thing. They could tomorrow do a ton of things that would negatively hurt Canada, right? They could just completely cut trade. Okay. Yeah. How long would we last with complete cut trade with the United States? A lot less than they would. Like, I genuinely think that we just have some people who are reactionary and they're not thinking about how do we tactfully negotiate this? And I think diplomacy is the tactful way, but nobody took that approach.
Well, VJ, go ahead.
No, I mean, like, I think anyone who's in the negotiating table are negotiating based on their position, their current seat, where they're in, which is going to be 4 years, 5 years, whatever that period is. It's a fixed period, right? They are thinking about their title, their position, their perception, how people, but everyday citizens are going to be there forever, like 100 years, 50 years, 80 years, right? And I don't think they're negotiating for Canada, but I don't think they're negotiating for the Canadians. That's how I see it. To that topic, I just wanted to add one more thing, if you guys don't mind. I mean, always look at, like, last week or the previous week I mentioned in terms of like trying an exercise in terms of like not to watch the mainstream media, but you always observe. If you observe the mainstream media, try and observe what they're asking us to hate. In this case, for example, they're asking us to hate Bitcoin because it kind of challenges their power. The only power the Fed has is printing money. In terms of like the only power that they ever have is the control of money. And Bitcoin challenges that. And they're asking us to hate it and telling crazy stories in the movies, crazy stories otherwise. Oh, it's used for this, it's used for that, all that illegitimate things. But guys, anyone who is hearing, it's not financial advice. Do your own research. Like, go deep. And if you can help yourselves, go watch the Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s speech on the Tennessee Bitcoin conference in 2024. Watch that. It's a very in-depth analysis that he has given. Bobby Jr. Trump also spoke, but Bobby Jr. spoke better, right? And if you want to consider looking at MicroStrategy, which is a company in the US, it was not doing anything. It was more like a shell company, not doing much. But now they are like 99.9%. They're actually betting all their bets on Bitcoin, and they are selling convertible notes on it. Now it's a $74 billion enterprise. MicroStrategy. Study Michael Saylor on MicroStrategy, right? He said Bitcoin is going to zero in 2013. And in 2020, he ended up buying Bitcoin when it was $9,000. He has said it'll go to 90, it'll go to 900, it'll go to 9 million. And then I'll still be buying it. That's what So these are some points that you can look into, and also look into Pathfinders and Business Development Podcast. We had a beautiful conversation with Adam O'Brien. I think we had terrific questions to him. If you can watch that, I don't benefit anything if you are buying Bitcoin. I think it's for your own sanity, and just wanted to leave with that.
Yeah. I struggle a little bit with crypto, and because I genuinely think Bitcoin has a limit. I get it. I get the reason why people say that that's the one to go with. But here's the thing: even Bitcoin's not backed by gold, right? Like, it's still an arbitrary value. We're still just deciding it's worth $9,000 with no real backing to make it worth $9,000, right? On a certain level, to me, it's just another fiat. It really is. Because unless you have something of true value, we'll call it moon rocks. Unless you got moon rocks, right? Unless you got some moon rocks that say, you know what? Absolutely. And I have $9,000 worth of moon rocks that you could exchange this for. Is there any real value to it? And that's my only thing about any type of currency, right? I actually think going back to the gold standard is the right move.
Right. I mean, do your research. There are pros and cons. I'm not saying everyone should buy Bitcoin, but try sending $100,000 to a bank account. You'll have 100 questions. Oh, why are you sending this? Who are you sending this to?
Yes.
Why? Try taking it across an airport. Here's a simple bet. Try taking it across an airport. Just $20,000 in cash.
A whole lot less.
No, you got to declare it or they take it.
Yeah. 10K and above, you got to declare it, right?
That's right.
And with Bitcoin, it doesn't matter whether you're sending $1 million or $1 billion. It's just one transaction. It's like costs the same time. It's as simple as that. But it doesn't come with the weight of like for example, if you had a physical gold, right? If you have to maintain it, and you need a safe at home, and you don't have any of those disadvantages. But I'll leave it at that. It takes time, at least. Like for me, I think the lowest, it has some barrier to entry, which I think Adam O'Brien is trying to solve with Bitcoin, buying Bitcoin easy. I'm calling him out because he's an Alberta-based founder and he has good intentions. I've seen it time and time again. So shout out to Adam. Yeah.
No, I just see it as the same right now. I see it as the same, right? I see it as a currency with no backing. And while right now its benefit over the current system is there is actually a limit. So in theory, as people buy more or acquire more, the value will go up just because there's less of it. Great. But is that any different than the current system, assuming we just stop printing money, right? Like one could argue that tomorrow the Fed could just say, yeah, we're done printing money. We're never printing money again. All the money in circulation is all the money that will ever be in circulation. Now it's Bitcoin, right?
That's right.
Right.
But the argument would be it still has no value, but the value we give it, where at least with the gold standard, it had whatever the value of a real needed mineral was.
Okay, Kelly.
I mean,
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Colin.
No, VJ, you had something to say. I got to hear it. Go.
No, I was just saying, like, this is my very passionate topic. I can speak for 4 hours on it, like just giving you a hint. So, I mean, like gold is inflationary. It has a 2% annual inflationary rate because they are finding new mines every year, and it has an inflationary problem. It's not limited. It's limited, but kind of unlimited, right? So there's a 2% inflationary base because of new mines are coming up, new gold mines every year. That is that. And Bitcoin is the opposite. It's deflationary by 21 million. That's the max limit of that. In terms of like, is it exactly the same as fiat? It's kind of not. There are a few cryptocurrencies which are kind of fiat, like for example, Ethereum, right? It doesn't have any max limit. Unlimited. You can keep adding more Ethereum to the chain. But Bitcoin, you cannot do that. And to mine each Bitcoin, there's actually a lot of like servers that have to come together and solve a problem, and that actually you mine a Bitcoin. It's actually putting a ledger, and they compete against each other to get that, and it takes a lot of processing power. It's energy, actually. You have to spend energy to get Bitcoin. That's what it is. It's not free like fiat money. Fiat money is basically like numbers on the keyboard, right? So that's what it is. You add zeros to the keyboard and print another $10 trillion. They go and print it. Okay, so no one can do that with Bitcoin, even if they wanted to. That's the difference.
But with the gold standard, you still have to mine the gold, right? So there's still a considerable amount of energy that goes into mining that gold. And for instance, they don't print more money unless there's more gold to back it. So even though it's inflationary, it still has to be backed by a gold standard. It still has to be backed by its value, right? I actually think they had it all figured out, and they're like, oh shit, well, this isn't working well for us because we're not mining gold as fast as we would like to. We have no choice but to take it off and just call it good, right? But I think the system they had before was actually a pretty good system. I wouldn't complain if we went back to it, other than the fact that I don't think we have any gold.
It's kind of an anchor to the currency. Oh, you have $10 trillion in supply. Oh, you have a $10 trillion of gold backing it. Great. And suddenly you cannot move to $20 trillion just because you wanted to, and create like wars that you're like not warranted for, right?
Yeah.
So exactly. If you have, like Bitcoin is definitely digital gold. I'm all for, like, if you want to back it with physical gold, go for it.
Because maybe that would be the solution. Maybe it's Bitcoin backed by gold. There you go. Although I don't know if there's enough gold in the world, VJ.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But like the latest news, I think from last week is like US Trump has started that they're going to have Bitcoin and few other cryptocurrencies as part of the Federal Reserve. And I think many other countries will follow suit, because like if US has more Bitcoin in reserves, so will other countries would like to have more Bitcoins in reserve. So that's just the latest news coming. Yeah.
I love it. Thank you for the discourse. I know I wasn't easy on it.
No, I love it. I love it.
All right.
Kelly, your topic.
Yeah. Okay. So I did a show yesterday talking about authenticity, and I did a show talking about authenticity because you never really hear people talk about what it means or what you're supposed to do with it or why it's important. And I'll be honest, I've lived a lot of my business career where I wasn't really allowed to be authentic. And, I'm sure you can always make your choice. But when you work in business development and you have high level meetings, it doesn't really matter how bad your night was at home. It doesn't really matter what's going on in your life or if you're feeling sick that day, especially when you have something really important. The expectation has been you show up, you put a smile on your face, and you make a good impression, right? I want to start this just by giving a definition of authenticity because you don't see it very often. And even during my research for my show yesterday, I found that the Webster Dictionary definition was it was so vague that it could have been almost anything. And so I ended up finding a quote from a renowned author, Brené Brown. I'm sure many people have heard of her. Her quote is, "Authenticity is a collection of choices that we have to make every day. It's about the choice to show up and be real, the choice to be honest, and the choice to let our true selves be seen." I think that that's a really great definition for authenticity. But I think, like I said, it's all about the choice. And one of the questions that I had for you guys today is, I gave my example where in business development, you can't always have a bad day. And it was funny. I remember talking to Brad Warren in an interview, and he looked at me and he said, "Kelly, Mickey Mouse can never have a bad day." And I know, Colin, you've quoted that before on this show, but it's a funny quote. Yeah. And what it means is it doesn't really matter how shitty the actor playing Mickey Mouse is feeling. They have to show up like it's Mickey Mouse's best day ever. And I think in a lot of situations in business, this is required. It is required. And it's completely counter to the pitch that we're making everywhere that we need to be as authentic as possible. And, when I started the Business Development Podcast, one of my commitments from the very beginning was I'm going to tell my truth. I'm going to say it. I'm going to be real with you. And I have upheld that the entire time. And it's a different space for me. I can kind of show up there and be me and share my vulnerability and share Kelly with really no repercussion, right? But there's genuine repercussion in business if you show up pissed off or upset to an important business meeting, or if you just start breaking down and having a little cry session because you had a really hard day. And I'm not saying we don't all deserve a cry session. Believe me, I've had plenty. But my point is that there are situations where it just isn't really appropriate. And I wanted to ask you guys, what do you think? What do you think with regards to authenticity versus adaptability in business? Is it more important now moving forward to be as authentic as possible? Or should we go back to the same way we've kind of done things forever, which has been you might be feeling shitty, but you're going to adapt for the day. You're going to get through that meeting. You're going to put on a brave face and you're going to deal with your challenge later. What do you guys think about that?
I'll go first, I guess. I think that's an everyday occurrence. Right. Yeah. That's as long as you're awake, you're going to be facing that. And I think, yeah, after hearing the Webster's Dictionary explanation on what authenticity is, I joined Truth Social yesterday. And I'm like, this is probably the worst decision I've made in a long time. And then I do it, and then I have to come up with a name. And you guys are going to laugh. My name is Authentic Colin.
Authentic Colin from Authentic Hustle.
and I think I'm authentic. But let's just say, when the shit hits the fan, how authentic are you? Right? Yeah. You have to pick up that phone. You have to deal with the situation. And I think you can be authentic. I think you can, if you are an authentic person, I think that's different than having to adapt, right? Because if you phone me, a few weeks ago, let's say a month ago, Kelly, when I wasn't dealing with the incoming tariffs so well, just mentally, right? I think that was being authentic though.
Yeah.
Right. I had to adapt, but I was still being authentic, right? I think if I would have answered the phone and said, "Oh, it's fantastic. I love this. This is so good.
Yeah.
So good." And is it going to decimate your business? Oh yeah. Yeah, like we've never seen.
Oh man, it's gonna be the worst.
This is just, you know what? I look outside. It's just blue sky, and money is just falling down. So I think it's almost a two-sided coin, right? You can be authentic and adapt, at the same time, right? And if whoever you're dealing with, or not dealing with, but whoever you're talking to, or going through something with, they will see that, right?
Do you want to hear? I have a funny counter to this, and it's that I think genuinely you can be more authentic because you own the business. It's something that I remember too. Like, there's so much freedom in being your own business owner to be able to just call it how it is, right? Like, I can sit down and be like, yeah, this weekend sucked, or this happened, or, you know, my friggin' tap on my house started exploding in the middle of winter and it was horrible, right? Like, on a certain level, I think being an entrepreneur has afforded me maybe the privilege to be more authentic. I think potentially as an employee, being truly authentic can actually get you fired. And yes, nobody's going to come out and say I fired that person because they were authentic, but they might find a reason to terminate without cause.
True. Okay. So how about this is my least favorite term in the corporate world. VJ will love it. I have one that we can put in the parking lot for next time. Little sticky note we put on the wall, right? but I wrote it down is, are you genuine versus authentic, right? What's the difference there? Because Kelly, you said it, right? If you're being genuine or authentic, you could still get yourself fired.
Yes.
Right. And that's that thing where you feel, wow, it's my prerogative as a human to be able to say what I feel. Debatable. Right. There's freedom of speech.
Yeah.
But there's also, so maybe whether it's next week or whatever, I think that would be a great topic is, you know, are you genuine or authentic versus, or, you know, how we phrase that, I don't know.
Well, what
there is a difference.
There's a cost. There's a cost, and it's not the same for everybody.
Right. It's like when they say about a person, you know, I'll use a man. That guy's a real gentleman.
Yeah.
Well, right. That when somebody says that holds a different weight, right? Then that guy's a blue sky thinker.
Yeah, but once again, is the person being a gentleman because that's who they are, or are they doing that because that's what they feel is expected of them?
Oh, right. So are they genuine?
Are they genuinely a gentleman, or is it an act?
Right.
Yeah, I think for a corporation, for example, right? I love this topic. For a corporation, like what is their best interest, right? They're not thinking of like, oh, I'm going to lay off 300 people. Oh, how am I going to deliver the message? They're not thinking about that.
Yeah,
they are thinking about the bottom line most of the time, and like, oh, yeah, shareholder value. That's what their priorities are. Yeah. And for an individual, what are your priorities? Like, what values are your priorities, right? And I think sometimes, I have two options. I think probably that might work. One is, people underestimate the power of silence. Actually, if someone says something that you don't like or you don't want to respond, I think the biggest response could be silence. Actually, don't say anything. You don't have to smile. You don't have to fake it. Just be silent. Be an observer, be calm, and just be silent. If you can train yourself to be calm in moments of like desperation, things like that, that's a superpower. Just be calm. I'm learning it myself. I'm not a master at it. That is one. And the other one is in terms of like managing expectations. And I think people, especially in an environment like that, they oversell it. Actually, I think people often oversell themselves or their brand or the product. I want to do the exact opposite, actually. Try underselling, actually, undercommit and over-deliver, actually. I think people will be delighted to see your over-delivering. Oh, he said it's going to be this, but it's doing 5 times more than that. So I think that would be a safer strategy in terms of like retaining your value and also giving more, and also like maintaining calmness and silence when there are moments of like tense situations and things like these. Two things I can think of in terms of like how you can protect your value to remain being authentic. And also you could be also genuine yourself. You didn't say anything that you didn't want to say, right? So that's what I could think off top of my head. But yeah, maybe that's more to it. Yeah.
Honestly, the further I kind of go down this path, I somewhat feel like authenticity is a privilege, right? Like, I don't think everybody has the right to be authentic, which is crazy, right?
Wow.
But the more that I think about it, I feel like when I became an entrepreneur, that was when I was allowed to share my truth and who I am and speak in the way that I felt comfortable, and stand up for myself. Frankly, I think on a certain level, as an employee, I don't want to say you're subjugated, but you do got to be careful about what you say. There really is, like, you know, Colin, you hit on it, like free speech. Well, is free speech real? Yeah, maybe. But are the consequences of free speech also real? Yeah, absolutely. Right?
Well,
you can't just walk into your boss's office and tell them, what you think they are because of what they did last week, or you're going to get your ass canned, right?
Situation in the US right now going on is they're deporting somebody because he spoke freely, and they're trying to stop it. But the reality is free speech. That will be the case in point in the courts, right?
Yeah.
Because of what he was saying. And you're right. Like, I live in the world of, I can't fire myself. I guess I could. But if I did, I would start up tomorrow, and I would hit the ground running. I just would. Right. But you're right. If somebody loses their job because of something they've said, that's not really, you're right. Authenticity doesn't win in that, or even being genuine doesn't win.
Yeah.
Right. Like I've had it too before, where somebody said to me who worked for me, "Oh, you're probably not going to like this." And I'm like, "Oh, you're probably best not saying it." Like, I didn't ask you to come insult me, or
yeah, right. Like,
and it's going to form an opinion, and I'm bigger than that. Right. But I still think there's a time and a place. I'm not saying I'm better. It's just there still is a hierarchy or a positional, grade that somebody should be looking at, and no different than me. I mean, I'm certainly not the top.
Right? Well, and the funny thing that I see about authenticity is the people telling you to be authentic, they tend to be like very well-off people, right? Like they're entrepreneurs of their own. They're personal coaches, successful personal coaches. They've done some stuff, right? But once again, my argument would be that authenticity is a privilege of making it to a certain level of status. Like, as crazy as that sounds, right? But is it not true? Is it not true that you have to be at a certain level of status to really, truly reap the rewards of authenticity?
Yeah. Well, and you know what you do? How do you equate it to is something's authentic? I'll use this will sound really bizarre, how my mind thinks. If it's a salsa, authentic salsa, right? It has reached a status. You're right? It has gone through the process to become that authentic brand, right? You have to be like a brand is authentic, right? Some brands are, and I I get where you're saying, and I'm gonna have to chew on that one because that's a deep thought.
It is. Yeah, it really
and
is.
I like it, right? That's something that I want to chew on, right? Like, and even the word, the term genuine, right? If it's genuine, what is that, right? That's a genuine or an authentic brand.
Well, it's so funny because, at this point, some of the people that I've even worked with coaching, and when we hit the personal branding spot, and I'm like, hey, just share your truth. Don't be afraid to share stuff about your family or whatever else. And they're just being like, okay, like, I'm a little worried. Like, okay, that sounds great, but like, my employer might not like that. And it can put me in a bit of a tough spot where it's like, okay, yeah, I understand that, because the last thing I want is for you to have negative repercussions from our time together. So do what's comfortable for you is always what I say. Take a step take a step, do what's comfortable for you or as far as you feel you can go without repercussion. But I can tell you that when I talk with people about personal branding, especially when they're employees of an organization, the conversation nearly always turns to, yeah, I'll have to see what our policy is. I'll have to see what our employer is good with me sharing, or if they're even okay with me sharing anything that isn't about the business. And there's a lot of companies that are completely wrong, by the way, who are holding their people back and not letting them be their real selves. But those individuals are working within the restraints of the company, and there are real repercussions if they start to share stuff that the company doesn't like.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Right. So on one hand, this show is about being authentic, and I think we're going to show up and be authentic. But I do think on a certain level, we have to be champions for the people who aren't able to do so as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, that's a great point that you mentioned, Kelly. I mean, it's definitely a privilege. And yeah, I think we have to try as much as possible to champion it for us and for others. And I mean, a lot goes without saying, actually, because like I was thinking, it's a deep thought in terms of like being a privilege. Yeah, and I mean, it goes back again and again. Who are you giving your power to, right? I mean, are you giving your power to just because you're getting a monthly salary? Is that what you want to do your entire life? You just have one life. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're going to do? I mean, that's a question I would ask anyone who are giving away their power. They have the power with them. Who are you giving your power to, right? That's a question I would ask to individuals. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's kind of like being stuck between worlds, right? And I do think we're in the middle of a big cultural change. I really do. But I also think, once again, we're in the middle of a big cultural change, and there's two sides, and there's still repercussions for being truly authentic.
Yeah.
I think that's a good spot to close this show on, guys. It was a great conversation today. And once again, an honor and a privilege to be with the great VJ and the great Colin Harms.
And the great Kelly.
And guys, if there's one thing I can say is just remember this. Be authentic.
Be authentic. Bye now. See you, everyone.
See you guys.
Oh, my goodness. I think I'm just going to cut it off right at the Colin. Be authentic.
Be authentic. That's good.
That was a great show,
good.
Guys. Wow.
Just good.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting to get that deep. Honestly, the whole thing just kind of switched like halfway through. I'm like, holy shit, it's a privilege. Like, it didn't even occur to me really in my conversation yesterday when I was talking about it, but it really is a privilege.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. You being yourself, right? I mean, it's not easy for everybody. No,
the argument is, well, of course.